There is a mistake that intelligent people make every single day. They listen to what people say instead of watching what people do. Someone tells you, "You can trust me." And because the words sound confident, sincere, or convincing, you lower your guard. But here is the truth. Trust is not built by promises. Trust is built by patterns. Anyone can tell you they are loyal. Anyone can tell you they care. Anyone can tell you that they would never betray you. But the real question is, what do they consistently do when they have nothing to gain? That is where people begin to reveal themselves. Human beings are... We have things we want other people to believe about us. And sometimes the person standing in front of you is not showing you who they really are. They are showing you who they think you want them to be. This is why learning to read people is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It is about becoming observant. It is about learning to slow down, to listen, to notice, to compare words with actions. Because one of the most dangerous things you can do is give someone access to your life before you understand their character. You do not need to hate people. You do not need to become paranoid. You do not need to hate people. You do not need to become paranoid. You do not need to assume everyone has bad intentions. You simply need to stop giving trust away for free. Have you ever trusted someone because they were charming, because they made you feel understood, because they said exactly what you wanted to hear, and later, their behavior told a completely different story? Maybe they promised loyalty but disappeared when you needed them. Maybe they constantly criticized other people while telling you how much they respected you. Maybe they were extremely friendly when they needed something and strangely distant when they didn't. These moments are not always accidents. They are information, and the more you learn to observe human behavior, the more you understand this simple principle. People reveal themselves through patterns, not through isolated moments, not through promises. Patterns. So before you trust someone deeply, watch them. Watch how they handle disappointment. Watch how they react when they are told no. Watch how they speak about people who are not present. Watch how they treat people who have less power than them. Watch what happens when they make a mistake. Watch whether they take responsibility or immediately search for someone to blame. Because character is revealed under pressure. Anyone can appear kind when everything is going their way. The real test begins when their desires are frustrated, when they lose, when they are challenged, when they are embarrassed, when they can't. And this is where your power begins. Not in controlling other people, but in seeing clearly. Because when you see clearly, you stop making excuses for behavior that should have been obvious. You stop confusing attention with loyalty. You stop confusing charm with character. You stop confusing confidence with competence. And you stop confusing someone's potential with who they actually are. Today, we are going to explore how to read people before you trust them. Not by becoming cynical, but by becoming wiser. Because the goal is not to trust nobody. The goal is to trust the right people, for the right reasons. And sometimes the strongest form of self-respect is simply this: watch first, trust later. People are constantly giving you information. The problem is that most of us are not paying attention. We hear words, but we miss patterns. We see smiles, but we miss resentment. We hear promises, but we ignore contradictions. We notice how someone treats us, but we don't notice how they treat everyone else. And that is a mistake, because the way someone treats you today may depend on what they want from you. The way they treat someone who cannot help them tells you much more. Imagine you're meeting someone new. They are incredibly charming. They compliment you. They become impatient with employees. They gossip about their friends. They mock people who are less successful. And yet they tell you, "I really value kindness." Which information should you believe? The words or the pattern? Believe the pattern. Because behavior is expensive. Words are cheap. A person can say anything, but consistent behavior requires effort. Someone can tell you they are disciplined, but look at their life. Someone can tell you they were honest, but watch what they do when telling the truth costs them something. Someone can tell you they respect boundaries, but watch how they react when you establish one. That is the moment when information becomes valuable. Say no. You don't need to explain yourself for 30 minutes. Just say no and observe. A healthy person may be disappointed, but they will eventually respect your decision. A controlling person may become angry. They may guilt trip you. They may pressure you. They may suddenly question your character. And now you have learned something. Your boundary didn't create their behavior. Your boundary revealed it. This is one of the most important ideas you can understand about people. You don't always need to confront someone to discover who they are. Sometimes you simply need to stop giving them what they want. Then watch what happens. If someone's kindness disappears the moment you stop being useful, that kindness may have been transactional. If someone's respect disappears the moment you disagree, that respect may have depended on obedience. If someone's affection disappears the moment you establish boundaries, that affection may have depended on access. And this doesn't mean the person is evil. It means you have information, and information gives you choices. You can step back. You can adjust your expectations. You can reduce access. You can stop sharing sensitive information. You can maintain a polite relationship without giving them a central place in your life. This is emotional intelligence, not judging people. Someone who constantly tells you that everyone else is stupid, jealous, incompetent, selfish, or crazy eventually may talk about you the same way. Pay attention to the stories people tell, especially the stories where they are always the victim and everyone else is always the villain. Life is complicated. Sometimes people genuinely are victims, but when every story has the same structure, I did nothing wrong, they betrayed me, they were jealous, they couldn't handle my success, everyone is against me, you should slow down. Not because their story is necessarily false. A person who never apologizes may eventually hurt you and explain why you deserved it. A person who constantly needs someone to blame may eventually make you the person they blame. So observe, don't rush. You don't have to decide immediately whether someone is good or bad. You only need to ask, what is this person's pattern? Because patterns speak louder than performances. And once you understand that, you become much harder to deceive. If you want to understand someone's character quickly, watch what happens when they hear one word. No, no, I can't. No, I don't want to. No, that's not for me. No, I disagree. No, I'm going to do something different. A boundary is a psychological mirror. It shows you how someone responds when they don't get their way. Healthy people understand that other people are separate human beings. Controlling people often experience disagreement as disrespect. That difference matters. Imagine someone asks you for a favor. You say no. They respond, no problem, I understand. That tells you something. Maybe they're disappointed. Maybe they wanted your help, but they respect your autonomy. Now imagine they respond, wow, I thought you were my friend. Or, after everything I've done for you. Or, they are attempting to make you feel guilty for exercising your right to choose. This is why boundaries are so powerful. A boundary doesn't just protect you, it reveals people, and you should learn to appreciate that information. Don't feel guilty because someone dislikes your boundary. A boundary is not an attack, it is a statement of what you will and will not participate in. You don't need everyone to approve. In fact, if you become emotionally dependent on everyone's approval, you become easy to manipulate, because anyone who can make you feel guilty can potentially influence your decisions. And this is why they can disappoint someone without believing they are a bad person. They can walk away from an argument without proving themselves. They can allow another person to misunderstand them. This is strength. You don't have to convince everyone that you're a good person. Your behavior will eventually speak for itself. Now think about the people in your life. What happens when you disagree with them? What happens when you say no? What happens when you don't answer immediately? What happens when you choose your own priorities? Do they respect you, or do they punish you? Do they accept your decision, or do they attempt to wear you down until you surrender? These details matter, because people often reveal their relationship with control through small moments. You don't have to wait for a dramatic betrayal. Watch the little things. Watch how they react when you choose a restaurant they don't like. Watch how they react when you disagree about a topic. Watch how they react when you need space. Watch how they react when you succeed without them. Watch how they react when you don't give them immediate attention. These moments provide clues. And remember, one bad reaction doesn't automatically define a person. Everyone has bad days. Everyone gets emotional. Everyone makes mistakes. The key is the pattern. Or do they repeat the same behavior and expect you to keep forgiving it? That's the difference. You are not looking for perfection. You're looking for accountability, because trustworthy people are not perfect people. They are people who can recognize when they are wrong and take responsibility. That is what you should watch for, not perfection, character. There is another signal that many people overlook: oversharing. When you first meet someone, pay attention to how quickly they reveal private conversation, and they may tell you stories that were clearly never meant to leave a private conversation. They may tell you stories that were clearly never meant to leave a private conversation. And you might think, wow, they trust me. But ask yourself another question. If they are willing to reveal other people's secrets to me, what makes me think my secrets will be safe with them? This is not about being judgmental. It's about consistency. People develop habits. A person who treats privacy casually may eventually treat your privacy casually. So listen carefully. What do they tell you about people who are not in the room? Do they respect confidentiality, or do they use private information as entertainment? Do they gossip because they enjoy connection, or because they enjoy having information that they know everyone's weaknesses, everyone's relationship problems, everyone's financial problems, everyone's mistakes, and they distribute that information strategically? You don't want to become another piece of information in their collection. This is why you should avoid revealing everything about yourself too quickly. Mystery is not manipulation. Privacy is not dishonesty. You are allowed to have parts of your life that belong only to you. Trust should develop gradually. Imagine a staircase. You don't jump from the ground to the 10th floor. You take one step. See whether they follow through. Tell them something mildly personal. See whether they respect it. Watch how they respond when you are vulnerable. Then adjust. This creates something powerful. Earned trust. And earned trust is stronger than instant trust. Instant trust is based on feelings. Earned trust is based on evidence. Never confuse the two. You can feel comfortable with someone and still not know them. You can have chemistry with someone and still not understand their character. You can laugh with someone for hours and still have no idea how they behave under pressure. Time reveals things that charm hides. That's why patience is one of your greatest advantages when evaluating people. Don't rush intimacy. Let circumstances test the relationship naturally, because eventually everyone gets tired, everyone gets frustrated, everyone experiences disappointment, everyone encounters temptation, everyone faces a situation where their words and interests collide, and those moments reveal character. You don't have to create tests. Life will create them for you. Your job is simply to notice, and when you notice, Nate, don't immediately explain away what you saw. This is where many people make another mistake. They see a red flag, then they create a story to make the red flag acceptable. Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they'll change. Maybe. But don't ignore patterns because you are emotionally attached to the outcome. Hope can be beautiful, but hope should never replace observation. Watch, listen, and let reality speak. One of the most revealing tests of a relationship is not your failure, it is your success. When you struggle, many people will sympathize with you. When you succeed, their true emotions may become harder to hide. Pay attention. When you receive good news, do they celebrate, or do they immediately minimize it? That's not a big deal. Anyone could do that. You just got lucky. Or perhaps they change the subject. Maybe they suddenly remind you of someone who is more successful. Maybe they make jokes that are slightly insulting. But maybe they become unusually competitive. These moments don't automatically mean someone is jealous, but they are worth observing. Healthy relationships allow both people to grow. You don't need to become smaller so someone else can feel comfortable. You don't need to apologize for improving your life. You don't need to hide your progress. But you also don't need to use success to dominate others. The goal is not superiority. The goal is awareness. Notice who genuinely wants to see you become stronger. Notice who supports your growth even when your growth changes the relationship. But when you become independent, their behavior changes. That is important information. Real friendship doesn't require you to remain weak. Real loyalty doesn't require you to remain dependent. Real respect can survive your growth. Think about the people around you. Who encourages you to become better? Who secretly prefers the old version of you? Who celebrates your victories? Who only appears when you fail? Who gives honest advice? Who gives advice that keeps you dependent? These are different relationships, and you need to learn the difference. Another powerful clue is how people respond when you receive attention. Some people can support you privately but become uncomfortable when others recognize you publicly. Again, don't jump to conclusions. But watch patterns. A person who consistently tries to diminish your achievements may not be protecting you from arrogance. They may be protecting their own ego. And you should not build your life around protecting someone else's insecurity. You can be humble without becoming invisible. You can be kind without becoming small. You can succeed without humiliating others. And you can recognize someone else's insecurity without allowing it to control your life. The mature response is not revenge, it is distance. If someone cannot celebrate your growth, you don't need to attack them. You simply need to understand the relationship accurately. Maybe they belong in your life, but not in your inner circle. This is an important lesson. Not everyone needs to be your enemy, and not everyone needs to be your closest friend. There are levels of trust. There are levels of access. There are levels of intimacy. Wise people understand this. They don't give everyone the same key to their life. They observe. They evaluate. They choose carefully. And once you understand this, you stop asking, does this person like me? And you start asking, does this relationship make sense? That's a much stronger question. If you want to know someone deeply, watch them under pressure. Pressure removes options. It makes self-control more difficult. It exposes habits. It reveals priorities. But when something goes wrong, the real character often becomes easier to see. Watch someone when they are losing. Watch them when they are criticized. Watch them when they are embarrassed. Watch them when they are late. Watch them when someone challenges their authority. Watch them when they don't get what they want. What happens? Do they become cruel? Do they become defensive? Do they blame everyone? Do they become dishonest? Do they attack the weakest person in the room? Or do they pause? Do they communicate? Do they take responsibility? Do they attempt to solve the problem? Think about anger. Anger itself isn't automatically a red flag. Everyone becomes angry. The important question is, what does the person do with their anger? Do they communicate it? Or do they use it as a weapon? Do they become threatening? Do they humiliate others? Do they break things? Do they manipulate? Do they punish people through silence? Again, observe the pattern. You don't need to diagnose anyone. You don't need to label them. You only need to decide what behavior you are willing to accept in your life. That distinction will protect you, because your job is not to fix everyone. Your job is to choose your relationships wisely. There is a dangerous habit many people have. They see potential. They don't see behavior. They say deep down, they're a good person. Maybe. But you are not building a relationship with someone's potential. You are experiencing their behavior. Potential is what someone could become. Character is what they consistently choose to be. Never confuse the two. Someone may have good intentions and still repeatedly hurt you. Someone may have trauma and still behave irresponsibly. Someone may have a difficult past and still need to be held accountable. Understanding someone does not require you to tolerate everything they do. Compassion and boundaries can exist together. You can understand why someone behaves a certain way and still decide that you don't want that behavior around you. That is maturity. Another thing to watch is how people handle mistakes. Everyone makes them. The trustworthy person says, I was wrong. The untrustworthy person says, you made me do it. There is a difference. Accountability creates trust. Excuses destroy it. Look for people who can say, I don't know. I made a mistake. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I need to do better. Those sentences may sound simple, but they require humility. And humility is one of the foundations of trustworthy character. A person who cannot admit a small mistake may eventually defend a large one. And we've already established something important. Trust is built by patterns. Some people are incredibly charming. They know what to say. They know how to make you feel important. They remember details. They make strong eye contact. They tell great stories. They can make a room laugh. And charm can be wonderful, but charm is not character. Charm is presentation. Character is consistency. A charming person can be trustworthy, but charm alone tells you almost nothing about someone's moral character. This is one of the most dangerous mistakes people make. They confuse emotional intensity with genuine connection. Someone makes you feel amazing, and you assume they must be amazing. But they are not always evidence. Someone can make you feel understood because they are genuinely attentive, or because they are highly skilled at reading what you want. Someone can make you feel special because they truly appreciate you, or because they know that flattery creates influence. You need time to tell the difference. This is why you should never make major trust decisions based only on how someone makes you feel during the first few interactions. Give the relationship time. Watch consistency. Watch behavior when the excitement disappears. Employers, leaders, mentors, anyone. Ask yourself, does this person's behavior match their image? If someone constantly talks about honesty, are they honest when honesty costs them? If someone constantly talks about loyalty, are they loyal when you're inconvenient? If someone talks about respect, do they respect people who disagree with them? If someone talks about discipline, does their daily life reflect discipline? Look for alignment, words, actions, values, consistency. When these four things line up, trust becomes easier. When they constantly conflict, the more carefully you should observe what they actually do. You don't need to announce your character. Your behavior demonstrates it. A trustworthy person doesn't need to repeatedly say, trust me. They understand that trust is earned. And this applies to you too. If you want trustworthy people around you, become trustworthy yourself. Keep your promises. Respect boundaries. Tell the truth. Admit mistakes. Don't gossip about private information. Don't manipulate people into staying. Don't punish people you attract is influenced by the standards you maintain. Raise your standards, but don't become impossible to please. Standards are not perfection. Standards are principles. You can forgive mistakes, but you don't have to ignore patterns. You can understand weakness, but you don't have to tolerate repeated disrespect. You can give second chances, but you don't have to give unlimited access. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is quietly change someone's level of access to you. No announcement, no revenge, no dramatic speech, just distance. Because peace is often more valuable than being proven right. Now let's make this practical. Before you give someone deep trust, ask yourself 7 questions. Question number 2. How do they treat people who cannot help them? Watch how they treat service workers, employees, strangers, people they don't need, because power reveals character. Question number 3. How do they respond when I say no? Do they respect the boundary, or do they try to punish me for having one? Question number 4. Can they admit when they are wrong? Not, sorry you feel that way, but I was wrong. That sentence requires accountability. Question number 5. How do they talk about people who are not present? Do they protect people's dignity, or do they turn private information into entertainment? Question number 4. Or do they consistently minimize and compete? Question number 7. How do they behave under pressure? This may be the most important question of all, because pressure reveals priorities. Now here's something important. Don't use these questions to become obsessed with analyzing everyone. You are not conducting a psychological investigation every time you meet someone. Life isn't supposed to become a courtroom. The goal is simply awareness. Observe naturally. Listen. Notice. And most importantly, don't ignore information because you desperately want a certain relationship to work. You may have a business partner whose behavior repeatedly concerns you. You may have someone in your life who keeps crossing boundaries. And every time it happens, you tell yourself, they'll change. Maybe they will. But don't build your decisions around who someone might become. Build them around what they consistently demonstrate today. This doesn't mean people cannot change. Of course they can. But real change produces new patterns. You don't have to debate whether someone has changed. Watch. If the behavior changes consistently, you have new evidence. If the words change, can be useful. Sometimes you meet someone and something feels wrong. Don't automatically dismiss that feeling, but don't automatically treat it as proof either. Use intuition as a signal to observe more carefully, not as a final verdict. Maybe your intuition is noticing subtle inconsistencies. Maybe you're projecting an old experience. Maybe you're simply uncomfortable with someone who is different from you. Observation helps you separate these possibilities. So instead of saying, I don't trust this person, say, you can trust someone to return a book without trusting them with your finances. You can trust someone professionally without trusting them emotionally. You can enjoy someone's company without making them your confidant. You can respect someone without becoming close to them. This is emotional intelligence. Different people get different levels of access, and you decide those levels based on evidence. There is a beautiful quality that can become dangerous when taken too far. Always seeing the best in people. Optimism is good. Compassion is good. Forgiveness is good. But if your desire to see the best in someone causes you to ignore reality, then optimism becomes self-deception. You don't need to assume the worst about people, but you also don't need to invent excuses for repeated bad behavior. This is a crucial difference. Suppose someone lies to you once. You discuss it. They take responsibility. They apologize. Their behavior changes. That's one situation. Now suppose someone lies repeatedly. Every time you discover the lie, they create another explanation. They blame circumstances. They blame you. They become angry that you questioned them. Then they repeat the behavior. At some point, you don't need another explanation. You need to accept the pattern. This is where many people lose years of their lives. They keep waiting for someone to become the person they imagined. They fall in love with potential. They trust promises. They remember the good moments. They ignore the repeated pattern. And eventually they become exhausted. You don't have to do that. You can love someone and still recognize their limitations. You can forgive someone and still keep your distance. You can wish someone well and still close the door. Forgiveness does not mean unlimited access. Understanding does not mean agreement. Compassion does not mean self-abandonment. These distinctions will save you. Another important lesson: don't reveal your deepest vulnerabilities to someone simply because they reveal theirs. Mutual vulnerability can create connection, but let trust develop. People sometimes use emotional intensity to create artificial closeness. Everything feels deep. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels meaningful. Slow down. Real trust doesn't need to be rushed. If a relationship is healthy, it can survive patience. Anyone who needs you to trust them immediately should make you more cautious, not less. Because urgency reduces observation. When people rush you, you have less time to think. And when you have less time to think, you become easier to influence. So slow down. If someone says, you need to decide right now, ask yourself, why? If someone says, everyone else is against us, ask, why am I being encouraged to isolate myself from other perspectives? Healthy relationships don't require you to surrender your judgment. Healthy relationships make room for your judgment. This is why strong people don't fear questions. They welcome clarity. Manipulation often fears scrutiny. Truth can survive examination. So ask questions. Take your time. Verify. Observe. And remember, you don't owe anyone immediate trust. Trust is earned. Access is earned. Disciplined in what you reveal. Disciplined in how quickly you attach. Disciplined in how you respond emotionally. The easiest person to manipulate is often the person who reacts immediately. They get angry immediately. They trust immediately. They reveal everything immediately. They defend themselves immediately. They make decisions while emotional. Don't be that person. Pause. The pause is powerful. Someone provokes you? Pause. Someone pressures you? Pause. Someone makes a huge promise? Pause. Someone provokes you. This is why patience is not weakness. Patience is strategic. You are allowing reality to reveal itself. Another way to become harder to deceive is to separate what you want to believe from what the evidence shows. Ask yourself, what would I believe if I had no emotional attachment to this person? That's a powerful question, because sometimes we don't believe people because the evidence supports them. We believe them because we want the relationship to work. We want the business deal. We want the friendship. We want the romance. We want the opportunity. And desire can distort judgment. So when you feel yourself, the more carefully you should examine the evidence. This is not pessimism, it's intellectual honesty. Another powerful habit is to watch what people do repeatedly. Don't obsess over isolated incidents. One mistake doesn't define someone. One awkward conversation doesn't define someone. One bad day doesn't define someone. Patterns do. Look for repetition. Does this happen again and again and again? If yes, now you're looking at behavior. You should also pay attention to reciprocity. Healthy relationships don't require perfect equality every day. Always forgiving while the other person mostly takes. You may not have a relationship. You may have a role, and you need to recognize the difference. Another sign of trustworthiness is consistency across environments. Does someone behave differently depending on who has power? Are they polite to powerful people and cruel to people beneath them? Are they kind when others are watching and disrespectful in private? Do they change personalities depending on what they want? Again, observe. Consistency matters, because your goal is not to find perfect people. Everyone makes mistakes. The question is, can you trust this person's character despite their imperfections? Do they learn? Do they take responsibility? Do they respect your humanity? Do they want you to become stronger? Do they tell you the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable? Those are the people worth keeping. And when you find them, don't take them for granted, because trustworthy people are valuable. Protect those relationships. Be loyal to them. Keep your promises. Respect their boundaries. Tell them the truth. Don't make them pay for the mistakes of people who hurt you in the past. Discernment should make you wiser, not colder. Now take a moment and think about the people in your life. Not the people you hope they will become, the people they actually are. Look at the patterns. Who respects your boundaries? Who only respects you when you agree with them? Who celebrates your growth? Who becomes uncomfortable when you become stronger? Who takes responsibility? Who always has an excuse? Who keeps your private information private? Who turns everyone's secrets into entertainment? Who is consistent? Who changes depending on the audience? Who is there when you have nothing to offer? These questions are not designed to make you paranoid. They are designed to make you awake. The people around you influence what you consider normal. And if you constantly surround yourself with dishonesty, you may eventually become comfortable with dishonesty. If you surround yourself with manipulation, you may eventually confuse manipulation with love. If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, you may eventually believe life is something that happens to you rather than something you can influence. Choose carefully, not because everyone is dangerous, but because your time is limited, your attention is limited. You cannot give unlimited access to everyone. Let behavior confirm words. And remember this, You do not need to become a master manipulator to understand manipulation. You simply need to understand yourself. Know your weaknesses. Know what makes you desperate for approval. Know what kind of praise affects you. Know what kind of fear controls you. Know what you are willing to compromise when you are lonely. Because sometimes the person most capable of deceiving you is not another person. It is you, when you desperately want something to be true. Self-awareness is your first defense. If you know your emotional triggers, you become harder to control. If you can tolerate being misunderstood, you become harder to intimidate. If you can walk away, you become harder to control. And this is the ultimate lesson. Reading people is not about becoming suspicious of humanity. It is about becoming responsible for your own trust. You decide who gets access. You decide how quickly trust develops. You decide what behavior you accept. You decide what boundaries you maintain. And you decide when enough is enough. Don't hate people who reveal themselves. Be grateful for the information. When someone succeeds, watch how they treat those around them. When someone fails, watch how they take responsibility. Because people are always communicating, sometimes with words, but more often with behavior. So slow down, observe, listen, think, and let time expose what charm tries to hide. You don't need to trust everyone. You don't need everyone to like you. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to prove that you are a good person. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to prove that you are a good person. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to prove that you are a good person. You don't need to trust everyone. You don't need everyone to like you. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to prove that you are a good person. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to prove that you are a good person. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to prove that you are a good person. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to trust everyone. You don't need everyone to like you. That's impossible. The goal is to build a life where you can recognize reality early enough to make better decisions. That is emotional intelligence. That is self-respect. That is wisdom. And remember, trust should not be given because someone demands it. Trust should be built because someone's behavior earns it. Words can create an impression. Promises can create hope. Charm can create attraction. But only consistent behavior creates trust. So the next time someone enters your life, don't answer too quickly. Watch, listen, observe. Give it time, because people eventually reveal themselves. And when they do, believe what you see. Rose. Your peace is too valuable to build on illusions. Your future is too important to hand over to people you haven't taken the time to understand. So move through life with an open heart, but clear eyes. Be kind, but have boundaries. Be trusting, but not careless. Be compassionate, but don't abandon yourself. And above all, never forget, the strongest people are not those who trust nobody. They are the people who have learned, who deserves their trust. Choose carefully and protect your peace.